The kidnapping and murder of a student.
Chilling murder of a University of South Carolina student.
Trial of the man accused of killing USC student Samantha Josephson.
From a typical night out to a devastating chain of events, this is the awful tale of a young girl, one that enthralled the country and illuminated the possible danger that can lurk in even the most ordinary parts of our existence. On the other hand, for Samantha Josephson, it was supposed to be simply another night spent with friends. Rather, it swiftly turned into a nightmare. But what in the world's name do you think happened to Samantha in the Uber? How was she found? Well, stick around till the end as we dig deeper into the tragic case of Samantha Josephson. This is Unsolved Files, a place where true crime stories are being brought to your doorstep. What are you waiting for? Just hit the subscribe button for more intriguing and suspense-filled crime stories. Now let's get back into this story and uncover this mystery. This is the tragic story of Samantha Lee Josephson, who was born in 1998 in the thriving New Jersey town of Princeton. Her close-knit family surrounded her with warmth and love as she grew up in Robbinsville, New Jersey. Sydney, her sister and closest friend, became her first best friend, with whom she forged an everlasting bond. Their relationship only got stronger as they navigated life's ups and downs as a growing family, and they eventually did everything together. Samantha showed a strong dedication to her studies during her time in school. She was determined to have a significant impact on the world, and she had a well-thought-out plan and a positive outlook on the future. She eventually enrolled at the University of South Carolina in 2015, declared a political science major, and hoped to one day work in government where she could advise lawmakers and shape the course of the country out of her desire for success and her thirst for knowledge. In addition, she was able to meet Greg Corbishley when she was attending the university. The two people first ran into one another in 2017 at 5 Points, a place that many students frequent. Ever since that initial encounter, their bond has remained unbreakable. During this time, they had a shared passion for sports and would frequently watch college football together. Apparently, they would spend their weekends hanging out together, going out to eat, or going to a hip cafe in the city, depending on the occasion. On top of that, Samantha was a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, where she participated in several community service projects and made contributions to the improvement of society. This gave her the chance to grow personally and professionally, as well as to develop close friendships and relationships with her sisters. As someone who has great objectives and a contagious personality, her friends characterized her as someone who possesses an infectious personality. By the beginning of the year 2019, Samantha was in the final year of her university education and on the verge of a significant change in her personality and life. The fact that she and her friends were aware that it would only be a few short months before they would say goodbye to college life and eventually go their separate ways made them determined to make the most of the time they had left on campus, both intellectually and socially. Additionally, her relationship with Greg was working better than it ever had before. He graduated from high school a year earlier than expected and currently resides in Mount Pleasant, which is approximately 2 hours away. Greg and Samantha tried their best to make it work despite the long distance that separated them, and as a result, they ended up becoming closer than they had ever been before. Multiple times a day they communicated with one another, and Greg would even make the trip to the University of Southern Carolina every other weekend to spend some time with the love of his life. On March 29, 2019, Samantha requested that Greg come down and spend the night with her. Even though they were not supposed to see one another during that weekend, Samantha turned out to be in a fairly foul mood because she had recently learned some unfavorable information regarding the health of a member of her immediate family. She knew that only Greg could cheer her up, so she begged him to drive down and comfort her. Even though Greg sincerely wished to be by her side, he sadly already had other commitments, but he vowed to see her in a day or two. Nevertheless, he then suggested that Samantha go out with her friends that evening, only to distract her from the situation and possibly temporarily forget about the problems that she was experiencing. In addition to this, he assured her that he would be in regular touch with her throughout the night, that he was going to keep her company throughout the night, and that he would be there for her whenever she required his assistance. Although she wasn't in the right frame of mind to party, she admitted that Greg's offer made sense and she didn't want to be alone, so she called up her friends and they went on a road trip. Samantha and her friends gathered at the Bird Dog in 5 Points, Columbia, at perhaps 12 in the morning. The venue is a favorite hangout for students from the University of Southern Carolina, and it is a place where they can socialize, drink, and potentially listen to live music. Samantha's friends immediately caught on to the fact that she was not having the best of times and that she was not in a very joyful mood, even though the music was thumping and the environment was electrifying. She appeared to be more engaged in her phone than the company that was around her, and she was reserved and distant towards others. She frequently remained in the isolated areas of the bar. As the night progressed, Samantha noticed that she was moving more and more away from her circle of friends. Before she even recognized what was going on, she had become disconnected from her friends. As soon as she realized that she was truly the only person in the pub and that she had no idea where her friends were, she felt agitated and decided to leave for the night. Despite this, Samantha left the pub a little after 2 o'clock in the morning, and she later called Greg to inform him that she was on her way home. She was aware that the right thing to do would be to contact an Uber to guarantee that she would arrive home safely because she lived a couple of miles away. Within a few minutes of 2 o'clock in the morning, Samantha was captured on security cameras engaging in a conversation with Greg over the phone. Greg had volunteered to keep Samantha company as she waited for her vehicle to come. Approximately 6 minutes later, what appeared to be her Uber arrived, and he pulled up right next to Samantha in his black Chevrolet Impala. However, before the driver could even fully stop their vehicle, Samantha jumped into the bay and pulled the right rear passenger door of the car open. She then got into the car and proceeded to close the door behind her. Subsequently, the vehicle was observed departing nearly quickly and traveling southbound on Harding Street. Greg, her boyfriend, who was in daily contact with her through text messaging, almost instantly detected that something was wrong with Samantha's journey. During the time that he was so preoccupied with monitoring her travels through the Track My Friends app, he became aware of the fact that Samantha was heading in the opposite direction of where her apartment was located. After that, he attempted to get in touch with her by calling her, sending her an SMS, and even sending her a Snapchat message. However, she did not respond to any of those messages. Throughout the entire process, the location of her phone was moving increasingly farther away from her place of residence. Eventually, around 28 minutes after the initial arrival, they were in the Rosewood community. Greg attempted to tell himself there was a logical explanation for everything, even though he sensed something wasn't right, convincing himself that she was securely at home in bed and would certainly call him in the morning. He reasoned that she had most likely left her phone in the Uber. But as morning rolled around and Samantha had not responded, Greg realized he could no longer ignore his worries. In the hope that Samantha would arrive on time, he called her boss, knowing that she had a shift scheduled at work. Greg's worries instantly increased, and he realized something was seriously wrong when the boss replied that Samantha never showed up for work. He then gave Samantha's friends a call, and when they confirmed that they hadn't heard from her either, he persuaded them to report her missing. Meanwhile, he headed straight to 5 Points to assist with the search. Greg wasted no time trying to learn what had happened to Samantha as soon as he got to the University of South Carolina. He contacted her friends, and they all went to the Bird Dog Bar, which was the last place she was seen. Greg persuaded the management to give him access to the previous night's CCTV footage in the interim. Because he'd talked to Samantha several times the night before, he knew exactly what to look for and had a fairly good idea of when she had departed. He quickly identified Samantha from the video, and she promptly drove off in the black Impala. Greg brought the video to the local police station in the hopes that his prompt action would help locate Samantha. Unfortunately, the search for Samantha Josephson had already ended by the time Greg arrived at the police station with the tape. What do you think happened to Samantha? Just a few hours earlier, the police had discovered her body about 65 miles from the spot where the black Impala had picked her up the previous evening. It was at that same moment that Greg understood, when he watched the location updates on Samantha's phone that night, that he was viewing her kidnapping as it was taking place. She had been severely attacked, and her body was riddled with more than 120 knife wounds. Would Samantha Josephson still be alive if she had been legally armed with a gun? The authorities were eager to get in touch with the driver who was spotted picking up Samantha. But to their astonishment, it turned out that Samantha was never supposed to be picked up by that particular car. Furthermore, it was discovered that Samantha's initial Uber driver canceled her request since he was unable to find her. However, it was evident that the vehicle Samantha entered was not her Uber driver. It appears that she unknowingly approached a stranger's vehicle, opened the door, and entered the vehicle without fully comprehending what she was doing. The police were aware that locating the person who was driving the black Chevrolet Impala was essential to locating Samantha. As a result, they searched through the CCTV footage that was captured by cameras located in the vicinity, meticulously studying the footage frame by frame and making a valiant effort to track down the movements of the vehicle. An unsettling finding was subsequently uncovered as a result of the examination of the security-recorded material. A minimum of 25 minutes had passed since the black Impala had been skulking around the Five Points neighborhood before he finally picked up Samantha. Do you think the man was just waiting patiently for someone to fall victim, or was he naturally waiting and spying on Samantha? Meanwhile, the video showed the vehicle traveling up and down several times, apparently in an attempt to locate a victim. After the driver eventually saw Samantha standing outside by herself, he made a U-turn and then drove in the direction of her. As he got closer to the location where she was waiting, he noticed Samantha attempting to get into another vehicle, which she mistook for her Uber, and it was obvious that he then took his opportunity. Because there was absolutely no doubt in the minds of the law enforcement officers that the driver of the Impala had a few queries to answer, they issued a BOLO alert to all of the units in the vicinity, requesting that they be on the lookout for a black Chevrolet Impala. Only 26 hours after Samantha had vanished, a patrolling police officer found the vehicle that met the BOLO alert's requirements at 3:23 in the morning on March 30th. In addition to the fact that the car was found less than a quarter of a mile away from the bird dog, at the very block where Samantha was last seen alive, the officer found it intriguing that this car was driving in the very same area where Samantha had gone missing the previous evening. This made the situation even more suspicious. After following the vehicle for a few minutes, the officer finally flashed his lights and signaled for the driver to pull over. The officer then stopped the vehicle. When the officer first described the reason for the traffic stop, the driver appeared to be pretty helpful and believed that it was nothing more than a typical traffic check. However, as soon as the officer revealed the specific reason for the stop, things took a dramatic turn for the worse.
All right, man, you got to step on out, man. All right, here's the deal, man. I pulled your car over because it matches the suspect. Get your hand in your pocket. What are you, crazy? Get over here. Hey, get over here. Come on, run. Hey, I'm gonna release the dog. I can't. I was just gonna see if he'll stop. Bravo Mike wearing a gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt. Nunez, keep going. He's gonna be on your left.
The identity of the driver of the car was revealed to be Nathaniel Rowland by the police after they successfully apprehended him for evading the officer and took him into custody from the scene. He was 24 years old at the time and had spent his childhood in the neighborhood of New Zion, which is the very same neighborhood where Samantha's body was discovered. In addition, even though all of this had been a coincidence up to this point, it would not continue to be so for a very long time. When Nathaniel was a child, he had a fairly typical life. His teachers referred to him as a wonderful child who had a bright future ahead of him and a family that was extremely supportive of him. At one point in time, it appeared as though Nathaniel was meant to make something of his life, but it appeared that in recent years, he had headed in the wrong direction. The charge, which was set for October 19, 2018, was the one that drew the attention of the authorities, even though he had several minor traffic offenses against him, such as not wearing a safety belt and having an unlocked liquor bottle in his passenger seat. On that day, Nathaniel is said to have been one of two men who kidnapped a woman at a traffic light, then forced her to drive to an ATM where they drained all of her money from her account, assaulted her, and forced her to drive to her own home, where they stole even more of her belongings before fleeing. Nathaniel is accused of being one of the men who committed this crime. Nathaniel Rowland was detained and charged with obtaining goods under false pretenses that were worth $2,000 or less. The things were later recovered at a neighboring pawn shop, and after tracking them back to their original owner, Nathaniel Rowland was arrested. He was never prosecuted for the claimed kidnapping or carjacking, however, and he was never arrested. In the instance of Samantha Josephson, on the other hand, the evidence painted a considerably more unsettling picture. A significant amount of blood was discovered in the trunk of his vehicle as well as on the passenger seat. The cell phone belonging to Samantha was discovered in the glove compartment of the vehicle, which provided proof that Nathaniel and his vehicle were linked to criminal activity. Even more damaging evidence was discovered during the investigation of Nathaniel's apartment. They discovered a two-bladed knife that had Samantha's blood on it, in addition to a bandana and socks that were stained with Samantha's blood. Samantha's blood was also detected on the weapon. Not only that, but her DNA was discovered beneath Nathaniel's fingernails. After being accused of kidnapping, murder, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime, Nathaniel Rowland eventually went on trial on July 20th, 2021. He was ultimately found guilty of all three charges. Throughout the trial, the prosecution called a total of 31 witnesses, many of whom were recognized authorities in their respective fields. According to the prosecution, Nathaniel was reportedly following Samantha about the neighborhood as early as 25 minutes before she was picked up on the night of the murder. Nathaniel, whose Impala was just 2 cars behind Samantha, took advantage of the opportunity to make his move after he saw Samantha trying to climb into the back of his vehicle while she was all by herself and talking on her phone. Samantha had mistakenly thought that the other vehicle was her Uber. Once Samantha was finally inside his vehicle, he triggered the child's safety locks, which meant that the doors could only be opened from the outside. As a result, Samantha was unable to escape from his vehicle because she was trapped inside. The prosecution contended that even if Samantha had quickly understood that she was being kidnapped, it would have been very impossible for anybody to hear her scream due to the loud music and chatter that was happening right outside the car window. It is unknown if Samantha immediately realized that she was being kidnapped. It was found that Samantha had passed away in the automobile that night, and that Nathaniel had then moved her body to a field in New Zion, where she would eventually be discovered. This area was located only 3 miles away from the residence of Nathaniel's parents. A police pathologist determined that the weapon used in the attack was identical to the knife that was discovered at Nathaniel's residence. Tragically, she sustained more than 120 stab wounds to her neck, back, abdomen, and lungs. Nathaniel was recorded on surveillance cameras attempting to withdraw money from Samantha's bank account just a few hours after he viciously murdered Samantha. On both occasions, he went to 2 different automated teller machines and made a total of 9 attempts, all of which were unsuccessful, and he left without any money in his possession. Nathaniel Rowland was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Samantha Josephson on July 27, 2021, after the jury deliberated for a little more than an hour. He received a sentence of life in jail without the possibility of release following his conviction. Because of the murder, New Jersey passed Sammy's Law, which strengthens protections for drivers and passengers who use rideshare services. This law was enacted as a result of the murder. On January 5, 2023, President Joe Biden gave his signature to a piece of federal legislation that bore the same name. Now, how can you just kill such a vibrant and young lady for no reason? I feel Nathaniel should be given more than just a life sentence, probably with hard labor. What do you think? Let us know in the comment section below. And what do you think of a brave little girl whose spirit was tested but never broken? Check out our previous video, Dad Tries Not to Cry When Kidnapped. Daughter is Found. True Crime.